Well then,
We are alive.
great. Um, hi, hi all. To everyone who's joining us. Currently I'm on Zoom, so I don't actually see what's going on right now. But I'd like to introduce this panel. We have a superstar panel of comedy editors and one actor who's sitting right behind me. So to introduce everyone, first I'd like to start off with Cataline. AJ, if you would like to introduce yourself first.
Yeah, AJ Cataline. I'm a picture editor, comedy editor, and I'm cutting Ted Lasso. I just started again on season 4. Uh, Really excited to be back. I'll tell you more about that in a bit. But I also want to mention that I serve on the board of directors of the Editors Guild with Meg and with Ashley McKinney, who's running this behind the scenes. So it's glad we have a good Editors Guild presence here today. But happy to talk editing and comedy. I've been doing it for a while, and I have no idea how we got here. It's a long story, but I'm sure I'll figure it out in answering some questions.
Muted. Next, I'd like to introduce Lily Janney. If you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lily Janney. I'm also a picture editor. I've mostly worked on comedies. I most recently edited on Tire season 2, which came out this summer on Netflix, starring Jack. Crushed it. And yeah, I also work a lot on documentary, but I do love comedy and the light and joy it brings to my life. And so I'm so excited to be on this panel and talk about things.
Thank you so much, Lily. The next person I'd like to introduce is Meg.
Hello, everybody. Meg Rediker, picture editor. I try to keep them always guessing. I try to go from show to show to genre to genre. Wish I could do more films, but right now I've been in the TV world for a while. I did 30 Rock for many, many years, but I did actually want to say that I learned my comedy editing chops by working with Michael Moore, which wasn't necessarily enjoyable, but I did learn how to do it. And I love comedy. And I think at the next one we do, we should have a writer because I think a lot of comedy is about the writing. And that's it.
Meg, that actually sounds like a great idea. And let's put it this way. There are other ideas in the works, but to continue, Rob, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rob Nassau. I'm an editor of all kinds of projects, but mostly in the realm of funny.
Um,
Make
that's
it
amazing,
funny.
Rob.
You make it funny by editing it. Doesn't start funny, I bet.
That's right.
Depends.
And behind me, Jack, would you like to also introduce yourself too?
I'm Jack Bernhardt. I'm an actor and a writer and kind of a musician, but I don't really publish that as much as I do the other two things, but mostly a comedic actor, and that's why I'm here. So yeah, thank you.
And hi, I'm Phil. I'm an editor. I'm an assistant editor. I've done a bunch of stuff, to say the least. And I'm really happy to just be part of this panel. So before we actually get into it, I would like to mention one more thing too. We have a BCPC LA meetup at St. Felix in Hollywood on Saturday, September 13th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And we're just starting to have the BCPC London meetup too, which I will definitely get back to everyone when that panel is by at the end of this panel. But look out for that. And yes, so now to get into this. I have a whole I have like a whole 19 questions.
Announce that you have 19 questions. Just ask the questions. I can do it.
Okay.
Well, actually, can I say something what Meg just said about
Of
writing,
course.
which is so cool? I want to second that. It's so much of what we do in the cutting room is kind of writing, especially in comedy. Because you can I mean, Meg knows this, but how many times do you like bail on like the scripted joke and find something else that was like improv in the day or it was funnier or we do a lot of ADR jokes. We try not to, but sometimes you can set up a whole different joke by writing a line that the showrunner writes. It's a really good point that Meg made, and writing is but yeah, I like to think of everything. We're writing with picture and sound too, so we're kind of like writers.
Well, I think Lily could really speak to this, but she knows that untires a lot of we ended up improvising things. Yeah, that's really how comedy went down when we did it on like a big level, and they finally had a budget, and they finally had all these like they had like John Lovitz, they had like they had all sorts of like very famous comedians, yeah, and things like that all of a sudden, and I as a nobody was able to just go in there and do whatever the hell I wanted. So I don't know what editing must look like from that standpoint. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I only say that because I worked on the show that Lily edited. I didn't make that clear, but yeah, Tires on Netflix. Yeah.
I would say though that a lot of editing though, like everybody asked me, was there improv on 30 Rock? And I would say there next to none. And I would say that there's a precision in writing and there's a rhythm to writing. And I think editing comedy often is about that precision and about the writing. It's bringing the writing forward. And in some ways, when people start changing the words, or to some extent, that changes the rhythm. So I think like Rob, who's could speak to this a lot, coming from I think in some ways in nonfiction and working in documentary and stuff like that. I feel like those people can work better with like improv because you're really creating the story and creating the rhythms, and you're not dealing with the writing. I don't know, Rob, do you have anything as far as that's concerned to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I started in documentary, did that for a decade or so, and I was always making that stuff funny just by instinct. But I remember when I first started doing scripted stuff, like 20 years ago, um, I was like, "Wow, someone wrote this. This is easy." Uh, when you encounter an improv heavy scene, it's like I think it's the best. Like it just frees you to do anything because they've already thrown out the script, so now you can choose what you want to do. There's a different methodology for every kind of project, and there's something different when there's a lot of improv and when there isn't, and there's we can try to get into specifics, but it's also liberating when it's written, when every syllable matters, that can kind of free you to hone that. But no project ever goes from script to screen without a word changing. It just the writers and writers like to pretend that's what it is, but we
And actors change it all the time.
every movie I do has hundreds of ADR lines. The trick is that they shouldn't feel artificial.
So to begin, I'd like to actually, which is a good segue to, how did everyone here find their niche in comedy television, considering we have so many different, I'd say not even genres, but so many different types of comedy? For example, Ted Lasso is, at least in my opinion, more dry slash like dry-ish comedy, more compared to 30 Rock, which is very like lightning like fast-paced comedy. And Rob, I mean, you've done so much. I mean, when I think of you, I also do think of Whitest Kids You Know, in Children's Hospital, which is very much, I mean, I think of it as like one of the most like uh very much like web originally web-based comedy that like made the leap to that was so new from like that era of comedy. And Lily Tires is very improv heavy, as we discussed about. So I guess if you can all speak to how you guys found your niche in comedy. Even though you guys also do more kind of editing other than comedy editing.
Who wants
I'll
to
just
start?
go ahead.
Yeah,
I
go
was
for it.
I was going to say that quickly. I had said that I'd started working with and Doc. That's where I got my start, really, and ultimately working with Michael Moore. Who hired a bunch of writers and produced like doc producers and directors and put them in a room and they got in fights all the time. But in general, just I think Michael, well, however you feel about him, I feel like he taught me timing in a big way. I started out as an assistant working there, moved up to editor, and I worked on a lot of his shows when I was just starting out. And I liked comedy. I like comedy a lot.
I also started on docs in a lot of ways, and then was an assistant for a long time on comedies. And one of my favorite pieces of advice I got from an editor was to watch it with your eyes closed, because then you're just listening and all the jokes are in the timing. So it is more about the rhythm and how everything's hitting. And that is something I've absolutely taken with me through, because then, yeah, with Tires, there's so much improv. So it is really on me and like writing how this is going to be the funniest, best story it can be. And so that I do that with every cut.
Yeah, I just want to
Funny,
check as a
I
comedic
I
actor.
never do that, but I watch without the sound.
Definitely without the
Yeah,
sound.
yeah.
I just want to say that I'm sorry. I just want to say that I've had the like amazing experience of befriending Lily, who is my editor on a show that I acted in. And we were almost like 100% improv. So I don't even know how they even stitched it all together, quite honestly. But that's what she was dealing with. And she told me like the reason certain lines were picked above others were because they helped like stitch that story together better, basically. So I learned something from that too. But yeah, I like kind of was like worried when this was being filmed because we weren't sticking to the script in a weird way. And I was like, how do people have a guide? You know what I mean? So they just had to have good taste, I guess, and and move with the punches, you know.
Yeah, 100, like knowing how to trust your instincts and when to run with that was huge on that project for sure.
And
'Cause
it was
you have to really-
gorgeous. Thank you, darling.
Rob and AJ?
Yeah, I began in reality television and docs. It's the very first project I did out of I went to grad school at USC in the writing program, and I did a documentary coming out of that about Timothy Leary in the 1960s. And so I really had my editing chops on that. And then I moved into reality TV because that was like there was a lot of work in that for a lot of editors. So it was a great place to start.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some comedy reality TV. I did to the Tom Green Show, for example, which was pretty wild working with him. And then I did other things like Flavor of Love, and I did Kevin Hart did The Real Husbands of Hollywood, which was a scripted show but spoofing a reality show. So I kind of began in unscripted, and that always carried through. But I was always pushing to break the barrier and do, because there is unfortunately a barrier, as we know. They like to pigeonhole you in this town. You're either a scripted editor or an unscripted editor, and it's funny during the strikes, there was still a lot of work in reality TV, and I would apply to some of my old producers, like, I'd like to work on this reality. So, oh, you're scripted. You can't do reality. And so I've spent years trying to go from unscripted to scripted, and now you're saying I can't go back. But anyway, the skills that you learn in unscripted are really invaluable, I think, in scripted TV. And I want to touch on what was talked about turning off the sound or turning off the picture. Both are valuable. One of my mentors, Steve Rash, who cuts Curb Your Enthusiasm, he would always say that because, to your comment about where the actors are syncing with the script, there was just so much dialogue and it was all on top of each other. So he would actually cut just the sound and get that to work so it was smooth. And then he would go back and worry about the picture because the picture can follow that. So it's just something he always mentioned to me that's valuable. But then to what Robert was talking about, yes, I love to watch my cut with the sound off and just see how the images are cutting, because it's kind of like when you're on a plane and you're watching somebody's movie, you know, 3 steps up. I love doing that. And I can watch how it's like really interesting to see how that's cutting with no sound. So it's a good trick to do both. Well, listen to your sound and listen to your picture. But yes, that's my story. I started in unscripted, and then because I was doing a lot of comedy and kind of unscripted that was narrative, producers saw my value to slowly push into scripted, but it's challenging. And so I would suggest to people who are trying to make the jump to do like things like short films. I did a lot of sometimes like comedy, public service announcements or commercials. There's a lot of things you can do that show your skills in narrative that you can then try to build and get that first break on a scripted show if that's the direction you're trying to head.
Yeah, we're also New York for like going back and forth from documentary and scripted, which I associate with like a New York kind of scrappy resume. But yeah, like these guys, I mean, my first professional job was cutting market research videos on a cuts only system, you know, and it was like, where you have a focus group and two-way glass, and there were like German businessmen talking about IBM computers. And I remember going there like, well, it's not Hollywood, but it's movies, it's moving pictures. And I did an industrial film for Con Ed, and it was like guys coming out of manhole covers and giving the thumbs up. You know, I guess then I got into documentary. The editor, Paula Heredia, hired me to edit a documentary concert film with Adam Yauch of the Beastie Boys. That was like the first kind of real professional experience. And Adam and I really had a similar sense of humor. And, you know, and then from there, it's like reality TV became a thing. I was doing that as well. I did political commercials for a long time. I worked on all of Hillary's campaigns and just, so it's like by the time I started doing sketch comedy, I had done a lot of the things we were parodying. And it, you know, it all kind of, it's all mixed in the same thing. And like you were talking about, Phil, some of those things, I guess I got a toe in the world of scripted by doing web series at the time. Like I would be editing a reality show during the day and doing these web series at night, a lot of them with former members of the state, like David Wain and Michael Showalter and Michael Black, who Meg knows. And some of the web series like kind of became big for what they were at the time. And then some of them got picked up to become TV shows, one of which was Children's Hospital. And then from Children's Hospital, I went on to did a feature for Universal Pictures, and then just bounced back and forth doing whatever I could. And like another, you know, in addition to Showalter, who's, you know, you really learn from everyone you work with, as Meg is pointing out. I think Judd Apatow was influential working with him and just seeing the way he workshops everything, the way nothing is set, you know, just because it's been written. It's you know, to a fault. He has a methodology in that way. Yeah, and then, you know, just on and on. I do features and then go back to TV in between features and just kind of try to keep it interesting.
Well, I guess that's actually kind of fascinating how like everyone more or less started from documentary and unscripted. I can only speak for myself, as I also started from working on an unscripted show. Like my first professional credit was working on a cooking channel show, and then that moved to and then I worked on a John Bay Ramsey documentary.
I mean, if you can make that funny, you're like on your way in a comedy career. So,
I mean, well, it is funny because the job that I got one of the next jobs that I got was this show called The Filthy Rich Guide, which was a panelist job, produced by the same guys who did I Love the 80s and I Love the 90s. So I feel like, and then I moved through like I like hopped onto like documentaries like around the pandemic, worked on Kevin Garnett, Anything is Possible, and Kevin Garnett is a very funny kind of guy, and I finally worked in scripted. So I guess I do want to say that it is very fascinating to hear about how everyone moved from documentary, where you have to essentially like, I consider it to be one of the purest forms of editing, because you have to shape essentially a narrative out of like just like raw scenes. And definitely discovering how to craft those scenes, I think is just like, it's kind of like scales in terms of music. Like it's just really useful to like have those as the fundamentals of editing, at least professionally, in my opinion. Um, anyway, to continue, which also goes to my next question. How do you guys find the rhythm in terms of your edits? And even though we are talking even though we are talking about comedy, I would
You have a
also, I would
comedian
say,
behind you who's gonna help you out.
Hero, don't worry.
how do you guys also how do you find the rhythm in your edits?
Why are you pointing to me?
I think you discover that every show has its own rhythm, and comedy especially, but every show has its own rhythm. And when you start a show, I'm always, or at least when I start a show, I'm always trying to figure out what the rhythm of the show is, and talking to the other editors and like going, I mean, this is in the TV world, I guess, or I mean, it's true to film as well, but you're trying to figure out the rhythms, and you're looking at things like the writing again initially, but then you're I always, for whatever reason, like find the one actor that I think is getting the tone, or sort of really represents, like I don't know, like on 30 Rock it was Alec Baldwin. Like if I followed Alec, he could take me on any trip that, it would just work. But I think, like I said, every show has its own like rhythms. And I remember going from 30 Rock to Bored to Death, which was, a show for HBO, and that was also comedy, but completely different rhythms. And always have to adjust, because for 3 years I went from that show to the next show, back to 30 Rock, back to Bored to Death. And like I said, every show has its own rhythm. So you're trying to figure out what that rhythm is. And it's, again, listening to the writing, watching the actors. And sometimes there's the way in which the stuff is covered as well. It sort of gives you a notion of like how they want it to be cut as well. So, but by watching those things, those elements, I think you figure out what the rhythms are. And again, talking to other editors, or if you're working on a television show.
I'll chime in to say that Ted Lasso blew my mind about rhythm and threw out a lot of rules for me, because season one. So first of all, season one, we had no idea what the show was. Let me just say, we had no idea it was a hit show. You mentioned earlier that you felt it was dry. Well, when we read the first scripts of the show, we're like, this doesn't. And you remember the show came from a bunch of short sketches.
Of course.
Became a longer thing, and we were reading it like, it doesn't read like a comedy. It's reading a lot like a drama that happens to be funny.
Sorry to interrupt. I feel like the closest comparison that I can think of Ted Lasso is very much like Schitt's Creek, in terms of that like good-natured humor, good.
Yeah, well, it's comedy with heart is what I call it. And actually, a lot of comedies now are doing this. Like, well, I laugh. Like The Bear is a comedy, but it's Succession is a drama that most people probably would find a lot sort of funnier on the surface than The Bear. So the point is, there's a real blurring of the lines now between comedy and drama. But the question about rhythm. So when I went into it, I learned as a comedy editor that it's sort of like joke, joke, joke. Get to the joke, pace it, like lose all the air, because it was associated for years with some producers that air needs to be intentional, like pregnant pauses, awkward moments. But if you have air in the cut, it's working against the comedy. So I get to Ted Lasso, and we kind of cut a lot of the cuts like that before Jason Sudeikis got in the editing room with us. And when we did, his initial notes were like, can we slow this down here? Can we take a breath on this? I want this to land. Like, he was telling me to hold on shots like a lot longer than I felt comfortable holding on them. But then when I realized that was what he was going for, it became a real wonderful comedy art for me, because we were putting in, just taking our time in moments, letting actors breathe and take a breath, and letting, reactions land on other people. So, and you can criticize that because we're a half-hour comedy that's 50 minutes, an hour long. So certainly, that's interesting. But I have to say that there's a lot of times where it really worked, and that type of slow pacing really, I think, allowed audiences to feel, because what we're making them do with the show is we want them to feel and to laugh. And when they feel and it's sad, or they're feeling the emotion, the laughs actually the jokes hit way much more, because you're looking for that comedic release. So the timing, as Meg said, every show finds its rhythm. And I really learned that lesson on Ted Lasso. And what I learned is it's okay to indulge for a moment and slow it down. And then we can always pace it up later. Or that's the art of editing. You have to know when to pace and when to slow down. Because if you're pacing too much during a moment that should be a little slower, your showrunner, your writers, your director might call you on that, because you're missing some moments there. But then there's other times where it's like, we can get through this quicker, so pace this part. So that's really the art of editing. That's the invisible art, and there's really no way to learn that. You have to kind of feel it and know it. But yeah, so I think Meg said it great. Every show finds its rhythm, and comedy can be slower sometimes.
Thank you so much for that, Lily.
Yeah, so on Tires, actually, the first season was mostly edited by the showrunner, who's also the director of every episode. So it was a big, like, oh my God, shit, we have to present this to him. Like, what is he gonna think? But luckily, McKeever they do a lot of resets in the show, so you can hear him speaking in between takes. And so I used that to sort of like judge what everyone's laughing the most at, and what they continue to do the next take. They'll like, okay, that wasn't working, but that one joke was, let's pull that back in. So following that kind of rhythm was huge. But again, it is so much about instinct and your comedic sensibilities. And so again, just like watching it down and being like, did that make me laugh how I wanted it to? No. Okay, let's adjust slightly and then moving on. But for me, it's a lot of like watching it down and trying slightly different things and seeing what, I think that's probably true for all editors. But yeah, what hits the hardest. And actually, but Meg, I do have a question for you for 30 Rock, because it is so many like jokes per minute. Was there ever any kind of discussion about like, okay, we need no one's hearing this laugh because they're laughing still from the joke before, or was that just never a concern?
All it was Titan, 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 Titan. And
right? That's the way. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, and ultimately sometimes it was also Googling, like, what is this reference? We were constantly doing that. And there's Easter eggs upon Easter egg upon Easter egg in the show. So it was sort of like, that was just like, you can view it multiple times,
I've watched it probably like 20 times. And so, every time I'm like, oh wait, that's so funny. I can't believe I missed that before. So I love it.
Yeah, this is magic to hear as an actor. It's very cool. Cause yeah, a lot of the times we do have to go off script, because half the time you have like a famous ass comedian in front of you, and you have to be like really funny. Otherwise, you're not gonna survive on the show. And from my point of view, and when an editor picks up on that, like that is something that they would keep in like that, and that could roll with the punches, as you're saying, kind of. That's magical. I mean, you're making a lot of people very. I know that editing makes my work better than directing even does. That I just wanted to put that out there. I think editing makes a film or a TV show win or lose, quite honestly. I really think it's the end all of like it can make an amazing comedic acting performance look like shit if it's not well done. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Thanks from the actors. And I'm from Massapequa. I like Baldwin. So
Yeah, I think it's important that on the first cut we follow the rhythm of the actor actually before we start artificially pacing things. I like to kind of like those first cuts to be like how they paced it on set, and then you can kind of pace it up from there, or sometimes have to pace it down when they. But yeah, I think you're right. A good actor's performance is wonderful, and it's good to use that as your baseline.
But I will say one thing about actors, it's like when they're trying to be funny, it's generally not a good idea. I mean, because like you're cutting and you're like, oh, this person is trying to be funny. And it's like really hard to cut that person because like they just really need to stick to whatever emotion they're doing. Let the writing or let the editing or let the director, let that come through. But if you're trying to be funny, that's our worst nightmare, to try to
The
cut
actor
that.
needs to be in the moment. The
Yeah,
actor needs to just be completely listening to what the other person is saying and viscerally responding to it. That is how it has to go. Because otherwise it's like some sort of like masturbatory shit show that like doesn't work out. Yeah, it's true. It's true. You've all seen it. It's like it's really cringe, basically, is how I would put it. So yeah, that's how I feel. But and
Um,
that's from an actor.
uh, Rob, do you have anything to add regarding this?
On pace, yeah, what they said. Um, yeah, the actors will give you clues, and there's kind of there's a push and pull. You listen to the actor at a certain stage, and then at a certain stage you take control and decide what the pace you want to be. And sometimes that's what you imagine. It's both responding to what's in front of you from the footage and also to some degree imposing your own will on it, and turning it into the thing you want. One thing we haven't really mentioned is like there's a difference in pace depending on the venue, like so TV or in a theatrical movie. Like if you look at something on your phone and then watch it projected on a big screen, it's going to feel different, and it's not always certain which one should be faster or slower. It's very contingent. And then of course with an audience, generally TV, it's not being watched in a theater, so you want to tighten and get the jokes out because they aren't going to miss the next joke from laughing at it. In a theater, sometimes you're like both you sometimes open things up when you have a joke that really hits, and sometimes you want to build like a roll. You get a laugh, you want to build on it and hopefully top it, and and keep like the ball rolling. I grew up like watching Laurel and Hardy, and those movies have the strangest rhythm. So I would be watching them on TV. And I love it. It'd be like a joke and then a pause and then the next joke. And all the while the music's kind of bumping around underneath. And I was like, I mean, after having done some, man, that's so weird. Why would they do it that way? And then it occurred to me, they didn't have TV. They were timing it for the laughs in the theater. And a lot of the classic, the Marx Brothers also, their best films are adaptations of their stage plays. They knew where the laughs were and how to build on them and how to pace them. So yeah, pitch for getting it in front of an audience when you can, I guess.
But like those films, like Billy Wilder and William Wilder, romantic screwball comedies in the 40s and in 30s, 40s, and a little bit of the 50s, they were just going. Like the dialogue, was so fast. And I love those films. I also will say in film in general, which is a very different animal in terms of editing sometimes, but even with comedy, I like what you were saying in terms of what plays on a big screen. But also too, you have to remember that like if the rhythms within a film, but even a TV show, but more a film, if the rhythms are all the same, it becomes flat lines. So it's like in a way when you put your assembly, and again, other people who's cut, like Rob, you could speak to this. I don't know AJ or Lily, but when you have to really have builds and then slowing down and builds and slowing down. But if everything is the same rhythm, it's going to kind of just go flatline, and that's something that you deal with a lot when you're cutting a feature.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to surprise. It's all about suspense and surprise and setup and release, but that's true of drama as well as comedy.
Definitely.
Like, yeah.
Cutting off the ends and the tails of the scene after I have an assembly is what I do often, when I'm cutting a feature, because you're like, you don't want to resolve things. You want to stay ahead of the viewer. so that becomes a big part of what you're doing.
Hi all. I just wanted to mention we do have questions from our YouTube stream as well. And one from Brian, how many times in a TV episode and or movie would you say on average you might use ADR to make a new joke or help complete a joke?
Well, I mean, to Meg's point, these scripts are really well written by incredibly talented writers, so you don't want to have to deal with ADR. Usually what ADR does is enhance things, like to add an extra layer. One of my favorite episodes is Ted Lasso, the finale of season 1, where Ted is in his apartment and they're making a bunch of noise downstairs, and he has an upstairs neighbor who he says is upset by the noise. So in the episode where they're making noise and the shot is him just yelling up, "Sorry," but Jason wanted to add the name of, he loves adding little hidden gem, like little Easter eggs. So he wanted to add the name of his high school teacher. It was named Miss Shipley. So like he added that in the other. So sorry, Miss Shipley. So ADR can add some flavor and some things that were not there. I love like on wide shots when, like they can add a lot of ADR, like extra little fun jokes. And another great example in that same episode, which by the way was my episode I'm so honored to have won an Emmy for. Never thought I would ever get nominated for an Emmy, let alone win one. But in that episode, the whole joke of it was that so Ted doesn't understand there's ties in soccer. He just understands wins and losses, but tie is actually important, especially when they're at the end and they're trying to like not get relegated, and a tie would actually be better than a loss. So they think they've tied the game, and there's this shot of Ted and Coach Beard jumping up and down, and they weren't saying anything, but Brendan Hunt and Jason said, "Let's just put it in their mouths there." And so they're shouting up, "We got a tie! We got a tie!" And it was just an added joke. So ADR brings new layers of things, but sometimes, yes, it can shorten a joke. I got to work with Bill Lawrence, great comedy writer, did Scrubs and was doing Shrinking. And on season 1, he was really talking about writing in the editing room. He's like, "I really want to go from this line to that line so we can kind of move this along, but there's no way you can do that. So I'm going to write you a new line that'll help you do that." And when you have a writer in the room, they can do that. So ADR is really good that way too. But ideally, you don't want to rely on it too much, because some shows go really ADR heavy, and you can tell. But it's definitely can be helpful to pace things and to add new flavor and to try to help you jump from one part to the next.
Yeah, I mean, I would say every scene has ADR when I'm working.
Yeah.
Lip sync doesn't matter, and continuity doesn't matter. It's like pace matters, the jokes matter, the story matters. You just make it happen. If I take a particularly challenge when anyone like laughs in a movie when a character tells a joke, and you're like, well, I wonder if we could beat that. And often you can. It's not like because I'm the world's greatest joke writer, but like I have the perspective and the time to mull it over. A lot of times on set, they're just a little moment that flies by, and they're not like concentrated on that moment. But I kind of dig in and go, well, that he said something and she laughed. So what would be funnier than that? I'll write up ideas, and like most of the time I'll invite, the writers and the directors and everyone just like pitch in ideas, and we'll often end up beating it, just.
I have another question. What lessons do you carry from one genre to the other, if any, given the fact that everyone on this panel has worked on so many different so many different types of so many different genres of television and also film as well?
I do think New York is a little bit more fluid, and in terms of being able to work on different genres, just because we just don't have as big as community as they do in LA, and we're less a business a little bit. But I will say also, so we get to move from thing, but when you take from show to show or whatever, that it's really not that different. It's like you have to just like learn the rules, the laws that the show creates, you know? Like I did do one season of High Maintenance, and it was hard, but it was really cool. What I learned a lot on that because there it was a lot all about discovery, you know, and I think that discovering like they would shoot something and then you would cut it and then they would turn it something completely different from what you were doing. And you had to remain open to that, you know. A lot of it was taking out a lot of the drama, which was really interesting to me. I remember one day I was sitting in the editing room with Ben, and ultimately I had two sets of performances, and I was going for the nice guy, and he said, "Don't go for the nice guy." It was this veterinarian who was microdosing, and he said, "Go for the, you know, go for the mean, where he's kind of a dick." And I did that, and it totally worked, you know. And it's also our discovering moments. Like I remember in 30 Rock when I don't know if people remember the episode where she's trying to be you know, with workers or whatever, with everybody that's the crew, and she has to she decides to change the water bottle and everything like that. Like usually 30 Rock is really really cutty, but it's like the discovery of just staying on her, trying to lift that new water bottle in place. It was just like very funny. But I do really think that it is really about, you know, and yet drama. Like I just cut the Penguin, and that too is there's comedy in there, and yet, you know, you're discovering the same rules that you do in comedy. You know, it's just based on just a different critique or different stuff, you know. But there is comedy. I haven't seen Weapons, but from what I understand, Weapons is very funny.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, comedy and horror, I think, have a lot of similar techniques. Like you know, you shock an audience with a cut, and the same thing you do it with a comedic quick cut. They're two very similar genres, I think, and in terms of technique. And sometimes, yeah, comedy can be very funny too.
Yeah, and knowing how to bring the humor to things, that just makes everything drama or documentary, or like it just feels more human. So, and that's what we're going for. We want people to feel, we want people to engage. So I edited a documentary short about the closure of rural hospitals in America. So a pretty like bleak subject matter, but we wanted to make it as light as possible just so that people would be able to watch it and get through it. And we were struggling towards the end of like, okay, there just isn't enough space. Like, I don't know what's going on. And then I watched Bad Sisters on Apple TV, which is just an awesome show. And there's like a lot of really dark things in that. And then they'll just cut to beautiful aerials of Ireland, just like all the greenery. And then you just get to sit with it and then move on back into the story. And so I had the idea, I was like, wait, this rural healthcare film, we have so many beautiful aerials of the Appalachian area. So I put those in, and it just like changed everything, and we could all just like sit and move through the story so much with much more ease.
Sorry to interrupt everyone. There's a question from the live stream. Have you ever received a note that made you a better editor? And what's your favorite terrible note that you received?
I love to note sometimes. Well, first of all, I notes don't scare me like they did when I was young, because at the time I didn't have the confidence, and so I felt like I had built a house of cards and I could never do it again. And so they give you a note to pull out something, and you feel the whole thing will collapse. And what I learned over the years is that I could throw the whole thing out and make something else that would be good today. And it's confidence that you'll be able to find what it is. But one of my favorite notes I got was it was from Bravo on a reality show, and it was the second season of a show, and the first cuts went out and the notes came in, and the first note was, "There's a punctuation error in this title," and the second note, if you extrapolate the note behind the note, it was like, "We don't like the idea of this entire series anymore." So you know, you just have to roll with it. Like sometimes, like, you know, be thankful for the punctuation note, and when the other one comes right after, be ready to rethink everything.
Yeah, Bravo experience is we're laughing about. Yeah, that's a whole.
I'm remembering a favorite note. Maybe it was on The Big Sick. It was like there was a scene, and there was one angle that they shot this weird angle of Ray Romano's character. It didn't match Kumail's coverage, and I was like, I'm not using that. The other stuff cuts. And then somebody would, it might have been Judd or Michael Showalter, was like, I feel like there was something good in that. Like we looked at it and there's like, that takes really good. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't cut. And they went, yeah, but you only have to cut to it once. And I was like, oh, yeah. In my head, everything had to fit. But like I was like, oh, we actually, if this moment becomes its own thing, if you just let him take over the movie for a minute, it plays. That one comes to mind. I don't know.
I did a
Note
season
you guys got? You guys ever get a good note?
I worked on one season of Big Love, and the guy burst tears. I don't think he'd mind if I said this. I mean, this is years ago, but he goes, I hate the show. We're just gonna hand in your editing talk and let's just hang out and talk. And we talked for 3 days. And that's all we did. And we never edited a frame of the show.
Yeah.
He did that movie, It Be Goes Down. I don't know if anybody remembers that movie.
Wasn't that Kieran's like first role?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was really yeah, it's a good film. Yeah. He was interesting.
I mean, when you work with really good showrunners, I think you'll find that the notes that come in, or at least from the network and the studio, are way less. They're giving very broad notes rather than, sometimes they'll give detailed time code notes, but they just trust. It's really wonderful to work for someone like Bill Lawrence or Jason, and I haven't been able to do this a lot, but the notes are a lot different when you have really great showrunners. One of the notes we got from Apple once was, oh, we love this episode. It made us cry. And I was like, it's a comedy, but that's your first note, is it made us cry. So it was just cute, and laughed at that. Yeah, but you're right, Robert. I think, that's, we learn as younger editors, I think maybe, yeah, we're angrier, we're more defensive, and someone comes in with a note, and they're like, they have no idea how hard it was to sync that up and make that work. But by forcing you to redo it, I think in the end that you find that some of the notes are helpful. Some are just really ridiculous, and they're usually non-starters. But those, like, again, if you have a good showrunner, they'll negotiate out of those notes. But like, no, we're not going to do that. But we'll do these notes, but we're just not even going to go there, because that's completely missing the point of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, you want to do the notes, but sometimes the best thing is to ignore them. I remember.
Yeah.
It was an MTV show, and they gave the note that it's like they want it to be a drama, but now we've decided to air it at 3 p.m. and so now we don't want it to be too dramatic, but we make it drama, but not too much drama. And I went, yeah, that's you're either going for something or you're not. And I think maybe some other editors actually paid attention to that note, and I just went full bore into what I would have done anyway. And then the network was like, well, finally this episode is good. And I'm thinking, yes, because I didn't listen to your your note.
Instruction.
I think it's also important when you're editing to, I like to call this doing the spirit of the note. Sometimes they'll say, like, this line isn't working, or this shot something's wrong here. But what they're really saying is that you haven't set something up earlier. So you might not necessarily need to tweak exactly what they're talking about at a specific time code, but the solve comes a minute or two earlier by making something more clear, or sometimes you are doing the note in the work, or you're just doing it in a bit of a different way, and sometimes that can be a good strategy if you feel you're in a situation where we really have to use this shot, this takes, it's the only good one. So we don't have many other options there, but we can fix that by fixing something earlier in the cut. And then they look at that like, oh yeah, that's it. You solved their note, but you didn't exactly do the specific one. So it's all, it's diplomacy and politics, like everything else. Negotiation.
Yeah,
But
I have
go ahead, son.
We have
Go ahead.
a lot of questions.
Sorry
here.
to interrupt. So from the live stream, do you always listen to your gut feeling, intuition when first cutting a piece? If not, how do you know when to let go?
Definitely on the editor's cuts for me. I mean, I like pay attention to what has been done in seasons past, if it's a TV show or like films past, but I definitely am following my instincts. I mean, I assume that I got hired because they liked me in the interview and they liked my comedic instincts. I usually like try to be the biggest personality I can be and see how they play off that. And then, so yeah, then I follow what I find funniest, and well as, you know, also hitting the story beats, but I definitely follow my instincts a lot.
Yeah, follow your gut, and if you doubt your gut or feel like you've strayed too far, make another version and show them both. The chances are they'll prefer the one that you had passion about, because you probably felt that way for a reason. But you can always have the, a lot of times my first cut, I'll do what I want, and then I'll look at the script again and see how far I've strayed, and then I'll make another version that is more like the script. But I usually find they prefer whatever rabbit hole I've gone down.
We've kind of touched upon this. However, when you come on as a new editor to an already established show, do you adapt to their editing style or not? And if so, how do you go about learning and applying it? Because I feel like everyone on this panel has done this in some way or the other.
I think you do. I think in some ways it's like you're a team. When you're working on like a TV show, for example, you're a team player. You have to be a team player. And I think even when, you know, going back to the whole notion of an edit, it's like, yeah, you have your editor's cut, but you know, you kind of like let go and you go to the director and you go on another journey, and you know, you're working with other people. So I feel like, I don't know, I'm a very much a team player. And maybe that gets me in trouble at times because like I am always thinking about the team, but I really enjoy, you know, that sort of back and forth with other editors. I don't always agree with them, but I think it is important to sort of work as a team on a show.
Definitely.
Yeah,
And we're also remote too. You know, post has changed so much by this Zoom. You know, I don't know how many of you all were working as the pandemic was hitting, but I was. It was March 2020, and we got a memo. You know, the entire Warner Brothers studio is shutting down on Friday at noon, and it was just a scramble. Unfortunately, my producer kind of thought ahead and had gone out and bought all these hard drives, and we literally had the assistants downloading the entire Avid Nexus onto hard drives because we just didn't know what to do, and they didn't really have, you know, Jump Desktop really wasn't set up yet. So we went home and finished the entire season remotely that way on hard drives. It was insane. But to the point of what Meg said about working together, it is important, even in these days of remote, and so many shows now, like they just assume it's all remote. They don't want to get offices. But at Ted Lasso right now, we're going in 2 days a week. And during those times, it's important to come in and just talk to everyone and get everyone's sense of what they're seeing in the dailies, maybe screen some things together, you talk about some ideas together. So yeah, you do work as a team, and I just think that's well said. And it's something we just have to bear in mind in this remote world, not to lose that, especially in comedy, because comedy is better when you get to actually screen a cut with 4 or 5 people in the room, because you know it's a group laughing experience, hopefully.
Yeah, find like you'll kind of intuitively find your way into the style that other, you know, if you're not establishing it with the pilot, you just kind of, it'll feel like that show if it's already an established show or not, and you'll sort of already be partway there. And
Yeah, I was gonna say my first editing, like full-time editing job, I had assisted on the season of Aquafina's Nora from Queens before, and then the editor left to direct for a month, so I got to co-edit while he was gone. And then, yeah, so then when it's time for me to edit, I was like, oh, I already know the style of this show. And you just, because also, as we've said, like what happens in the dailies, it's all kind of leading somewhere. And so you follow that path and and then it feels like the show or it doesn't.
you also want to be willing to throw out the style of the show if that's what it's called for. Like, don't limit yourself to what's been done before. Maybe that moment needs something different.
Mm-hmm.
So a question that I like to posit, especially because we do have an actor on this panel, is as editors, what do you value from actors, and as an actor, what do you value from editors?
because we're
We
just
only because we have
I
we have
kinda-
mentioned this in previously. I'd like to just follow up on this question.
Yeah, I kind of answered that. I mean, I think that it makes or breaks a performance. I've worked with people on short films and things like that who were doing like if you watched it in person, it would be like an amazing acting performance. And then it was so poorly edited that it just broke it all up and it just didn't make any sense and the person seemed insane. You know what I mean? Like that's what made being on one of those bad movies made me realize how important editing is and that it's more important than I think even directing. I think that editing and writing are the most important parts of film and television right now. Um, for the most part. And the director, if you have a good one, they hold it all together. And I did on Tires, if we're referring to what me and Lily worked on. But yeah, McKeever's great. He like let us do whatever we wanted, like I said, but he was totally like the captain of the ship the whole time. And yeah, he was apparently very kind to his editors, so that makes me happy because I have my editor right here. But yes. Um, thank you. And
I would just want to add to actors. It's just like come to the set prepared is what I would say, because ultimately it's really a drag if they're not. But also be kind to other actors. When I was preparing for this, I was thinking of Kenan Thompson because for some reason I just feel like that guy has been on Saturday Night Live forever, and he is I don't know, he's the glue, he's solid. And it just seems like he's kind to other actors. He's kind of letting them shine, but he's shining. But also I think, we haven't talked about this, maybe we should talk about it, is how subjective comedy is. And I just want to say that, AJ, you mentioned the COVID, and I just want to say that during that time, I remember Saturday Night Live got so weird and surreal, and it had been kind of like off not that great, and suddenly it just came back, and it's still like, I mean, I don't watch it regularly, but sometimes you just like watch a skit, and especially the skits with Keenan, I just feel like the ones they're just really weird and out there, and I just like love that.
Oh
And
yeah.
but
What up with that?
yeah, what up with that? He's just such a solid actor that's prepared, but also like kind to other actors. You just watch them, and there's a lot of actors that are not as kind. And if you're not on camera and you're shooting somebody else's coverage, let's say, yeah, it's not about you right now. And I've worked on shows where there's an actor and you're like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, can you help that actor out a little bit? So that's important. Prepared and kindness is what I'd say.
And I feel like the energy that happens on set comes through in the footage, and it has such an effect on the final piece. And so I've also, I've worked on things where one actress was so rude to everyone, and then everyone, it's like it absolutely affected the performances, because we are all emotional creatures and we need to feel our best and feel safe in order to do our best work. And so I completely agree that kindness is a huge factor. I also was thinking about in 30 Rock, I don't know if you edited this episode, Meg, but when Liz makes the joke of like, acting's not that hard. You just have to wear the same thing and stand in the same place and like say your lines correctly. It's like, yeah, that's the baseline. That's what we like to start with. And then you're like funny and good, that makes it all better.
I will say Alec Baldwin was not kind. But that, I mean, I wasn't on set, but I just knew that. But every time there were certain actors like Will Arnett and him, like you would like get a scene and Will Arnett would be there and you'd be like, yes. Because those scenes would always be like, they'd, shoot some 50-50 or something like that. And they would always have a battle. There would be some battle involved. So that was really fun. But in general, it is kind of interesting that he wasn't so kind. But again, his timing is addictive. It's like everybody could follow that timing in a way.
And not just kindness, generosity is important too. Like Jason Sudeikis is super generous. Like he will say, oh, enough of the shots on me. Let's give it to Hannah or Gino Temple or some of our newer people who are appearing on the season. Give them a chance, give them some screen time. So, generosity to share the screen and also give other people some moments. I also love it when stars like Hannah Waddingham or Brett Goldstein, and turn the camera around. Sometimes that's just a stand-in reading the lines, but they'll actually stand there and give their side to feed the lines so that the other person is giving their best performance on the other side. So I love seeing that kindness and generosity on the set, and it makes the show so much better.
So another question that I have, and we actually have a follow-up one, which was predicted in the message, in the live stream. What do you think the key difference is between cutting feature films versus cutting television? And do you also have the opportunity to pick between cutting movies or television, or is it just like the flow of your career? Or will the industry let you switch between?
I'm all about the writing, honestly. I just go where the writing is good for me. That's how I judge it. But I will also say that as far as where your career goes, I mean, these are weird times too. You know what I mean? It's hard to know where I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, but you're just trying to work as much as possible, as far as that's concerned to you. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to just well, the difference between working on I mean, movies tend to go, you have more time. You assemble the movie, you work with the director, you work with the producers, you're looking at the whole film. And on TV shows, on the shows I've worked on, I don't think we've ever done the thing where you sit and screen, all the episodes. I mean, if it's in the old big orders, I mean, you're rolling the finishing. So you're kind of just, I mean, every show is different, so it really depends. But so I tend to, I like to just, when I'm picking a next project, I usually will go for something that's different than what I've just done or what I've done before. Just like I try to keep myself from burning out. So it's jumping back and forth between features and documentaries and TV shows, and or like maybe a punch up job on a movie that'll be shorter than starting one from the beginning of the shoot. And so, but if you're starting out, take whatever you can and learn from it. With the idea, sometimes you want to resist taking a job that knowing that it'll lead to more of the same kind of job. So if it's something you don't enjoy doing and you're getting enough offers that you feel like you can wait, you can turn something down and wait a month or two, and then something more to your liking will come along. You can do that. But as Meg said, in these times, you probably just want to jump on whatever best option you have at the moment.
So, given the state of the industry in 2025, what advice would you give aspiring editors who wish to work specifically in scripted comedy, given the state of the industry, and where do you see the form headed from now as well? Given that there's also so many forms of like scripted comedy that also like are on phones as well. Yeah.
I always say look sideways instead of looking up. And what I mean by that is it's like people that you're around that are, coming up in the industry, they're your contemporaries. They're the new people. And I think comedy especially is so prescient. You know what I mean? It's of the moment. And I think that on some level, yeah, comedy's changing all the time. And I think who's coming up is going to be the new master. So instead of always trying to get that job that was, because like that stuff's dated already. So I say look to your side and, take that seriously and, take your friends who are writer directors seriously. So much content is not happening on network or on cable or who knows what platform it's going to be. But I feel like it's important to look, again, look to your side, don't look up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with the YouTube space is getting bigger and bigger. And I think again, the lines are going to be blurred. Like comedy is not. Oh, I mean, yes, there's going to be your classic comedic shows, but then you have shows like The Rehearsal. Um, Dope Thief was a drama that I loved on Apple, but had some really. It was about a drug deal that's gone wrong, and it was a ton of shootouts, but it had some really funny moments because the situation was comedic. Um, so yeah, I just think that you're going to see, comedy should make us laugh, but it also should make us think. So you're going to see shows that blend comedy and drama, comedy and horror, and yeah, and comedy with heart. I love shows that make us feel as well as laugh. So yeah, I think that it's been changing really. I mean, since peak TV, since streaming, you know, 30 Rock and Seinfeld and all these shows really perfected a genre, which is incredible. But then with streaming came people trying new things, and so you have a lot more story, I think, mixed in with the comedy. So it's definitely changing that way from what I've seen.
So, to
It's
that,
getting longer. I mean, yeah, it's getting longer. You used to you have to get the 22-minute, like you had to cut the clock, right, on 30 Rock, right, Meg? It was like 23 minutes, 22 minutes.
It was
Um,
22:15. I remember to the date.
15, yeah. So that's why we had to learn to you had to get as much in. But now with streaming, it's like we don't care if the episode's 28 minutes, 34 minutes. So that allows the genre to change right there because of streaming. It can be longer, so you can do other things. So it's changing.
so another question from our live stream is from Ryan. I've taken comedy classes in stand-up, improv, and sketch comedy. Unfortunately, this doesn't give any more opportunity than a kid fresh out of college with two short films. Am I right?
I'm here to answer this question. Unfortunately, you're right, Ryan. Yeah, you're right. You gotta go out there and do something. I'll be honest with you. You gotta apply to managers. You gotta at least to stand up in person to get one. I would love to if you wanna just DM if you wanna know my information. I'll try to submit you to mine so long as you have like a reputable reel. But yeah, no, you're right. I have to be like Simon Cowell about this because yeah, you're fucked if that's all you have. I'm just telling you right now. It's honestly true. I worked for 10 years to get a 4 episode roll on Tires. Okay. So I went to college for it. I went to college in 2 countries for it. I went to the honors college. I've worked my ass off, and it really takes you can't just like walk into this. I'll be honest with you. I'm not gonna be like I'm not trying to be harsh, but yeah, no, you're correct. Unless you go out there and do it, you're not doing anything. But love you. Good luck. And also, I told you I would submit you to my manager if you contact me. So, yeah,
And
that's
make your own stuff, do your own shows and get them out there. There's so much more access available now than there used to be, I think, for people starting out to make their own stuff. And
Yeah. I work with a writer on this side who he's a TikTok. He started on TikTok, but then got so many views and streams that now he's a writer and on-stage performer with Late Night with Seth Meyers.
yeah. And Lily, look at Veronica from Tires. Yeah, she was all Instagram, and then now she's on SNL.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
just got this season of SNL. I'm so excited.
Yeah, because she put herself out there. So all you have to do is put yourself out there. I mean, I did it in a weird way, like a quiet way, because I kind of like was submitting to a bunch of managers when I was still in college, which was like a little sacrilegious at the time. But I ended up getting a manager while I was still in college, which was like, but that's just because I tried. You know what I'm saying? I went out there and I submitted to things. And I was lucky to have friends who noticed things that might apply to me, which also helps. So you can always ask your friends about any of these jobs in general. But yeah, no, if you're just like taking classes and waiting there, there's nothing to be done with it. And I would suggest starting on backstage.com and doing people's senior thesis films for grad school. That's what I would most suggest, because then you'll build a reel.
So what I'd also this is a kind of segue,
And Ashley's right. I just saw Ashley's
but
message.
Ashley said in the notes, the answer is always going to be no if you don't ask. Asking opens the door for a yes. Or to quote Michael Scott, quoting Wayne Gretzky, I'm actually going to mess this up, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't
You
take.
don't take.
So that's actually like one of the best pieces of advice that I can say as well on this. Which anyway,
I'll add to that too. If you do your own stuff, you'll be ready. Like asking someone for a shot doesn't help if you're not ready for it. And if you've made like 2 short films, you're probably not ready for it. Like, you just have to keep at it and just keep learning. I remember my first feature, 2013 or something like that. And my assistant, it was very Hollywood. My assistant came to me and said, "So I guess you've never done anything before." And I was like, "Well, I've been sitting behind an Avid every day, 10 hours a day for 18 years, but I guess if that doesn't count, but but that's what, had I been offered that film 15 years earlier, I wouldn't have been able to do it. It was all the experience I had, the experience we're talking about, even on things that don't seem relevant or are not glamorous, will help you prepare for and give you the confidence to do the kind of work you really want to do.
Yeah,
I mean,
I just want to add one thing too. It's just like know your strengths and weaknesses, because I feel like I have strengths in editing and I think I have weaknesses, and it's good to know what they are, because and that helps you also decide on what it is you want to do, like what kind of work you want to do, or what shows you want to do, or what your interests are. Because I feel like if you're focused on that, then you kind of it leads you in that direction. I mean I remember doing show with Triumph the Dog or whatever, and I lasted 2 weeks. That wasn't my strength, the type of editing that they were doing. Rob could do that and with his hands tied behind his back, but I just cannot do that sort of like somebody shoots a bunch of shit and they throw it at you and then you have to cut it with this stupid puppet dog. I mean, not that I don't think it's funny. I do think it's funny, but it's like I knew going in even that I wasn't going to last long. I was just like, oh, I know this is not going to work out, and so it didn't, and I quit. But at any rate, it's good to know your strengths and weaknesses in terms of an editing where you seem to excel and where you don't. And you don't have to tell everybody where you excel and where you don't, but it's good you yourself to know.
Yeah, and I might be wrong because I'm not an editor, but I always say that I feel like every single person who has any single role in the film industry has to have a little bit of a brand. Like they have to have a little bit of a vibe. Like, and I learned this from being an actor, but I've done enough work, and not in post, but like on set and for plays and things like that. But like you kind of have, in order to be understood and accepted into a team, you have to be very like straightforward with what you represent in the production. Like you have to be a team player in a way that is, at least this is how I feel as an actor, like you have to like fit the image of what is going on, and you have to be a specific team player within that. And I've noticed that might be true in post, but I'd be curious to see if anybody has anything to say on
so
that.
so what I would also like to include in terms of just going out and doing it, as someone who has been an additional editor on many projects, even like from my reality television days, when I worked on and my first credited job that wasn't an assistant editor was being a graphics person on the Filthy Rich Guide. And the only way that I got that job was literally just by like going ahead and doing it. Uh, Even though I was like playing around with After Effects, and then I just did it. And it carried on. I worked on a show called Love After Lockup, in season 1. Same thing. I just went ahead. I was like, I want to go cut, and then I cut. In fact, our mutual friend Dylan Greenberg, always love to name drop Dylan. She was working on a movie.
Our, as in me and Jack's mutual friend, Dylan
Yes.
Greenberg. Yes.
Who's an amazing DIY filmmaker, and also an amazing filmmaker in general. She was working on a feature called Spirit Riser. She needed help in terms of just like coalescing all of these separate scenes. I was like, hey, I can cut. And that's how I met this one.
So basically, what Phil is saying is that they were the assistant editor a co-editor rather on Spirit Riser, which is a very good indie film that is now sold at museums. So
Museum of the Movie Game.
good job.
All I'd like to say is just do it.
You already
Just like go ahead and do it. Or else you're not gonna do it.
Like something Ted Lasso would say. That sounds good.
I mean, the believe sign in Ted Lasso is.
I used to be a gymnastics coach, so I love the aesthetic of that show. Yeah, thank you for your service.
Right. Just go do it.
So to follow up with this, what, and especially because we do have a bunch of editors here. What do you think the most helpful thing an assistant editor can do for an editor working on a television show, as opposed, and what is your advice for assistants or aspiring people who wish to work on comedic projects? I know we covered who wish to work on specifically comedic projects, but what do you think the most helpful thing an assistant editor can do for an editor?
Summed up in like 3 words is like, how can you as an assistant editor help an editor, and how does that help on specifically a comedic project?
Obviously, we're always asking our assistants their opinions. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a big, big, big thing. And yet at the same time, it's like, you have to build that trust with an editor in terms of getting presenting your opinion. It's like everybody wants to come and just tell their opinions and tell you what they think right away. And that's not a really great idea. It's like you want to build a relationship, let that happen. And then ultimately, I depend a lot on my assistants to essentially tell me what their opinions are. The other advice I'd give is obviously work with sound. I know they really, in the union, they don't really want you to be doing the sound editing, but I will say sound is what I look for in my assistant beyond the dailies. The other thing is I want to say one great thing about editing, if we're going to go technical, is trim mode is awesome. And that's all I have to say. Learn trim mode.
Script sync, yes or no, Meg?
I don't need it. I also do my own form of kind of like string outs, but
Okay.
Sometimes I just do the script sync for the producer or the showrunner or the director.
Yeah, I really like it, but I try not to get too addicted to it. I try to at least start from the beginning and watch each take down both cameras and just really get to know it. But I'll tell you, once you're in a scene, having script sync is a lovely thing especially in comedy, because it's so common. You're in the room with the producer and they're like, what other takes do we have there? And if you can show it to them instantly, it's really effective.
Replace button too, by the way. Can I just say replace button? Very cool too.
Yeah.
The blue arrow.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I was gonna say
From the Phil. Oh, we can go on all day.
when there's a lot of improv, it's so helpful to either have a string out or a script sync. So just like play it back, all the takes, and then what made you laugh the hardest? Okay, that's the one we want to try to run with, and then how can we shape it around that?
Yeah, I look for my assistants to keep things organized. It's script sync is like key for me.
Me too.
So to actually follow up on not script sync, but also script sync definitely comes in clutch. And there's also editors who just don't use script sync, like Meg, like what you were talking about.
I never used it until it was invented.
But yeah, the assistants need to keep things organized, and
that makes sense.
I have a great shorthand with my assistant. We have code for what the different color locators mean. Um, I think it's really important, to build that trust and get that communication going so that, your editor just trusts you. And Alex Zabo, my assistant, I have promoted him to being an editor. We've co-edited a couple episodes. And I went to my producer and asked. So yeah, I've definitely given my assistant the chance to cut. And I love assistants doing that. I love them, I always say, if you see something, say something. I might be not noticing something in the cut, or there might be a shot that I might be, I know about it and I was going to put it in, but it didn't make it in. And so, speak up and always, be there to help support the cut. And that's, I think, I like to see an assistant editor, just a real team player and someone who's willing to really just be there to help me through the process. So yeah, trust and communication is key. Listening, yeah, and that relationship will build. So as Meg said, don't take it too fast, too quick.
So to follow up and to go back to a conversation about sound, especially what Meg was talking about in terms of wanting her assistants to be really good at sound, and I think that's also applicable to every assistant editor too, because sound, at least in my opinion, is one of the most important parts of editing and also film. So I guess what is your approach to cutting sound, and some of your strategies for developing sound beds, even though I know that we can probably have a 5-hour long conversation about this.
Yeah, as an assistant, I started doing really involved sound design. And as the editor, he was like, I want you to build worlds. And I was like, okay, I can do that. But then that's involving even other, pulling in, making your own loop group basically, and your own temp sounds, getting people from the team to help as well.
Yeah,
and so then when it was time to be an editor, it just, when the sound is real, everything feels more real, as we all know. And so I specifically, on a convention scene in Tires, there's this speaker speaking out to a whole bunch of men, and his thing is get hard. It's very silly. But so I got all the assistants and the post coordinator and post supervisor to give me noise, okay, I need you to give me grunts, I need you to give me boos, I need you to give me cheers and fuck yes, and then improv on this stuff, and how would you react to this, and then everyone gets to be involved, and it's so fun, and the scene just feels more real, and it's great.
Can I add that yes, sound is so important. In a show like Last O.G, our crowd was so big, the crowd became a character. So I had Alex build all that out. But as Meg mentioned earlier, let's bear in mind that we have to also kind of train our producers that, yes, we need to sell it in the room. We want the cut to sell, so when they're watching it, they're feeling it. But we always have to remind them that we are going to go through a sound process, and this is going to go to a great sound team, music editors, sound editors, dialogue editors, mixers, and they're going to really up it. But so we have to just kind of show them the potential. But yeah, sometimes producers forget that. And yes, putting my union hat on, we want to make sure. It also is this principle. We are picture editors, and we want to make sure that they understand that there's a process. So I try to always, I take those notes. I'm going to note that and give that to the sound team. We'll try to give you a taste of it and a flavor of it. But I agree with you. Yeah, because they can go on and on and on. Let's loop this. Let's go get the person down the hall to add that. So we're going to go do all that in a loop group soon enough. If you're on a low budget, maybe not, but it's just something that's, yes, I love assistants who crush the sound, and we need that. But I also try to bear in mind it's not totally their responsibility, especially when they say create the world. That's a little scary, but I know what you mean.
Always limitations with what you can even do in Avid versus Pro Tools.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Meg, what was your process on the Penguin? Because that's really
in terms of sound.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, when I'm cutting, I just lay down the beds first. You know what I mean? And then each step I go further and further and further. And it's I also love to use locators for my assistants and for myself, where I'm constantly thinking about beds and also actual effects. I mean, it's a process that builds and builds and builds and builds. But I think the ambient beds are the first and foremost when I'm cutting a scene, because that at least brings me into that space, you know? So, yeah. But also the other thing is a lot of what I'm really into after, because every job you're also learning on, and I will say on Penguin, my new love is perspective. Everything was through one person's perspective in every scene, usually two characters in the whole show. And that's a very cool thing that I'm like bringing to all my shows now, which is stating the obvious, but I love to state the obvious.
So, this is the last question that we have for tonight, and I would like to ask, what do you think some soft skills are that you believe all editors or aspiring editors, or even and assistants, just anyone should have, which I guess also ties back to like what I believe is like being a good editor in general, and also like having that within comedy. Uh, that hopefully that makes sense.
I'd say watch a lot of movies and watch a lot of TV. I mean, that's a big, big thing. I mean, the history of TV and film, as far as an art form, is not that old. And I just want to say that the one thing we used to say on 30 Rock all the time, which is not, came up with this, but they already did it on The Simpsons. That was a kind of a well-known thing to be said back in the day. And it's really true. Like The Simpsons just did so much. But I will say, just watch a lot of film, watch a lot of television. It's really, I mean, some stuff is just so amazing, you know?
I was gonna say the same. Love movies, like, you have to get excited by all different kinds and be inspired by what people have done before, because they've done everything. And it's all on YouTube now somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say like know how to fight for what you want, but don't be contentious in any way. Like, we're all creative people who need to work together, and technically like the showrunners, I mean, they are your bosses, and so you have to defer to them, while also, so you can like make the case you want, but if they ultimately decide they want what they want, you go with that. And yeah, definitely knowing how to like be perceptive and read the energy in the room, I think is important too.
I feel that a lot. You need the passion to do what you sort of have to get into character. I think of like being an editor is like getting into character, almost like an actor, but then you have to have that passion, but then you have to be willing to let it go. So, very fast, because there's always another way to do it. And yeah.
Yeah, we wear many hats. I try to explain to my relatives what I do. They still don't totally get it. And I'm like, look, I'm a diplomat, I'm a politician, I'm a marriage counselor, I'm a shrink. I do all these things to help a fighting producer and director kind of balance their visions, or, when a director is looking at the first cut and I mean, they love the cut is great, but they're like, oh, I wish we filmed this, so they get upset, and you try to talk them through it. And so it's about wearing many hats, and, running the cutting room and listening, I think is huge. Like, I read the notes on people's faces before they tell me what they are. I love to watch my producer and director watching the cut. And that's why, by the way, if you can, always set up your edit room so that your desk is you can view them while they're watching. If you can move the furniture in any way to make that happen. It's always tough when they're behind you and they're just watching the back of your head. So that way then you can kind of read the notes and feel the energy before they're given, and it really is informative.
To finish up on that comment, I definitely feel that, especially like when I'm working on like my own projects, and I feel like editors have like a sixth sense where when you're watching something with someone else, and you just know that it's not landing, even if like the person is like behind you. And then that just like completely changes your thinking, because you also like get in. I feel like, at least for me, I get inside my own head.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's that's an amazing thing to say in terms.
But be proud of yourself when it's working and they're
Mhm.
laughing or they're loving it. Be really proud of that moment too. And know that, that this is really working. And then, yeah, there you go. Editors need to give ourselves some self-love because we do amazing things, and sometimes we just hear the negative part, what's not working, but celebrate what's working, because that makes you feel really good.
Yeah. Yeah, celebrate the wins and like also embrace the losses. At any rate,
With all the lassoisms today.
I mean, Ted Lasso, it's such a wholesome show. I mean, honestly, all these, I would say like all the, as Ashley says, be a goldfish.
Yeah.
Either goldfish are actually like, they have some pretty, they get a bad rap. So at any rate, I just wanted to thank everyone so much for being part of this, and for this amazing conversation that we've had. And this will be up on YouTube. So if anyone wants to just like watch this, just like join Blue Collar Post Collective. Just like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can definitely watch anything. And I don't know how to, thank you so much for this. I don't know how to wrap this up, and I should know this as an editor.
This was brilliant for me to hear as an actor, so thank you.
Awesome. Thanks
Take
very
care,
much,
y'all.
everybody. Thanks, Blue
guys.
Collar Post.
Thank you.